So looking at creating a brand new form, I'm just going to go to forums.google.com. Now I can also go into my Google Drive. Let me show you that as well. If I start in my Google Drive and I click at the top left-hand corner, new, one of my options under more will be Google Forms. And if I go even further into this and I go to this arrow here, I have blank form is going to be one of the options there. And then if I just go to forms, I'm going to start at forums.google.com. I can create a blank form or I can create a blank quiz. So these are kind of nice little shortcuts for you if you do want it to like automatically create the quiz part of it for you, which means that it's just going to allow you to set an answer key and point values and that kind of stuff. I'm going to just do a blank form first, and I'll show you where you can then turn it into a quiz. So that would be like, if I were doing this myself, this would be my first step is I get a blank form, and up at the top right-hand corner, I'm going to go to settings and then quizzes over here on the right-hand side. And I'm going to choose make this a quiz. So underneath my options, we're not going to worry about our locked mode on Chromebooks. We're going to worry about these 5 options here. So when do I want the students to be able to see their grade? If it's a fully self-grading quiz, I would say you can do it immediately after they've submitted their quiz, right? They've taken everything, it's graded it, they can see their grade. If you're going to be doing mostly self-graded, but then you also have maybe a free response question, you can also do later after manual review. And then it's going to allow you to grade those and then send them back to students. I would say for the most part, though, we're looking at immediately after each submission. Respondent can they see their missed question? Can they see their correct answers? And then finally, can they see the point values for each of these questions? And then I'll just click save. So depending on how you're sending this to students, and if you're sending it via parent email or via classroom, something along those lines, you will want to make sure that you're asking the right questions. I can remember a few years ago, a teacher did this and she didn't ask the students' names and she didn't collect their email addresses. So it was basically anonymous quizzes that she collected. So you do want to make sure that you ask the students' names. And in a quiz in Google Forms, it's going to make every question a quiz, or every question is going to be a quiz question. So for something like name, I don't necessarily need to give them a point value for name. So I'm going to come down here at the bottom where it says answer key, and I'm going to change at the top right the point value to 0 and then done, which means it's not even going to count that as a point value question. It's just going to be 0 because hopefully they're going to get that right. All right. I am going to make it required down here at the bottom right. And this is ready to go. I'm going to go back to my settings because I do want to show you a few other things in the settings area that are going to be specific when we're talking about asking questions. So if I go to my settings and I come to presentation, presentation is going to allow me to just choose a few things with how the form looks to the students. So the first one is showing a progress bar. So that will kind of tick down at the bottom as they progress through the questions if they don't know how many questions there are going to be. If it's a short quiz, you don't necessarily need something like that. Shuffle question order. Let me talk about this for a second. That is nice. It's going to shuffle the question order, so it's going to kind of randomize some of those questions. However, if you ask name first and then you ask all your questions underneath, Google Forms is not going to know that you want name to be the first question asked. So I'm going to show you how you can shuffle your question order and also ask your name first and it doesn't get messed up. I've seen forms before where there might be 5 questions plus they ask the name at the beginning and the questions have been shuffled. So there's actually a question, name, question, question, question. So the name is kind of randomly placed within the form because they shuffled the question order. I will click shuffle question order just so you can see what that looks like though. If you only want students to respond once to this, you can uncheck this show link to submit another response. Now you can tell the students you're welcome to submit as many responses as you'd like. Maybe you don't give them the correct answers, so you don't let them see what the correct answers would be. You just let them see that they maybe missed a question. And so we're just working towards mastery at that point. And then if I go to general here, we're kind of working backwards, go to general. Collecting email addresses and along those same lines, restricting to TSC is only going to be applicable if you intend for your students to actually log in to their Google accounts. I know our elementary teachers have dealt with this a lot over the last few weeks. If it doesn't matter to you if a student is signed into their account or if their parent clicks on the email and then Johnny sits down at the computer and fills out the form and does the quiz, then I would uncheck both of those. Because that at least makes it so that they don't have to sign in. You're still asking their name, and you might even ask their email address or something along those lines just so you can track it. But it's not restricting them to TSC, so you don't have that headache of having to sign in. Now, if you prefer that your students do sign in with their TSC account because you want to make sure that it's actually them taking the quiz, go ahead and restrict it to TSC. You're welcome to collect the email addresses, which I think is probably a good idea. Response receipts are good if you'd like for students to get a copy of their quiz. That's almost just like a check off that they actually submitted the quiz. So I'm going to choose response receipts, and then I can choose maybe they just request it, or I can say, hey, always email that response receipt to them. They're always going to get a copy of their quiz, which is nice. We can also choose in this area to limit to one response. So maybe it isn't a mastery type of assessment. You want them to just take it once and be done with it. So we can limit to one response here as well. And then I'll just click save. And now I'm really ready to build my quiz. So let me give it a name. I'll be very innovative with my quiz here. So let's go back and talk about that. I want to collect their name first. I want that to be the first question, but I also want it to shuffle the question order. If you'd like to do that, what you're going to use are sections within a quiz. So my first question here is their name, and that's it. Then over on the right-hand side, I have my little bar, and this is where I'm adding content for my quiz. All the way down at the bottom of that bar is add section. And if I click that, now I have basically the beginning of my quiz, which will just be, here's the quiz, what's your name? And they're going to click next, and it's going to go to this next section, and this is where my questions will be. So now in this section here, again, over on the right-hand side on that bar, I'm going to click the plus button, add question. And now I can begin building my quiz. So I can begin building these questions. And when the students actually take it, because I've chosen to shuffle the question order, they're going to see their name first. And then once they get into this questions area, they'll see, I'll just add a question, number 1, and then another question, but they're going to see them in a random order here. So I'll add my questions there. I'm going to actually pop over to a quiz that I've made that has all of the question types already, just so that you don't have to sit and watch me write questions. You can just see what they look like. So our first question type here, let me zoom in so you guys can see that. The first question type I have is a drop-down menu. So the question stem is right here at the top, and then I have my answer choices going down. This is a drop-down menu question, which is actually going to look very similar to what this looks like, right? I'm going to have a drop-down of the answer choices. Once I write the question, and I'm going to make it required, then I'm going to come over on the bottom left-hand side, and I'm going to choose answer key. That's going to allow me to choose the correct answer. So I can select which one is the correct answer. Now, if I select more than one, that just means that a student could choose either roll over or move it. Those are the two options. In this case, it's just roll over. And hopefully you remembered from our name question up at the top right-hand corner, that's where I'm getting my point values. When I'm done, I just click done. So if I scroll down to my next question type, this is going to be short answer. So this one I wanted it to sort of look like a fill in the blank, but there's not really a fill in the blank style question in Google Forms. So all I did was I just added some lines from, my keyboard, and then I said the cat is one groovy dude. So this is my question stem here. Now this is a short answer question. So if I come to my answer key, with short answer questions, you can choose which short answers you're going to accept. Now, in this case, Pete is a name. So I really would only be accepting Pete with a capital P and spelled this way. Now, there may be a time where you might accept more than one response. Let's say, or more than one variation of the same response. Let's say the fill in the blank was blank are red, violets are blue. So the answer is roses, and you're going to accept roses capitalized and roses not capitalized. So you could put both of those answers there, and then you'll want to make sure that you choose mark all other answers incorrect. This could work for spelling tests. So if you are an elementary teacher and you'd like to still give some kind of spelling assessment, what you can do is record yourself reading those spelling words, and then add that recording link to your question, and then the students would just fill it out, and it's going to then self-grade for them. If I want to add answer feedback, I didn't do this on the last question, but if I want to right here, I can choose add answer feedback, and I'm going to choose because I'm assuming that most of my students would probably get the word Pete, but maybe they don't capitalize it. So I just might give them a little warning to make sure to capitalize. That just means that if they get it incorrect, they're going to see that make sure to capitalize. And then if I scroll down, I get my next question type. In this case, this is a multiple choice question. So I have my question type up here at the top. And what you'll notice about my answers is that these are pictures. So I've added pictures of the books. And then you can see on the right-hand side, this is the correct answer here. So how did I add pictures? If I choose add option, on the right-hand side of my option, all the way over, there's a square with some mountains. And if I click on that, I have the option to upload a picture, take a picture, do a Google image search for something in my Google Drive. So there's several different options here to add pictures as answers. I also have the option at the top here to add a picture as a question. So this can be really helpful, especially for younger learners. And then again, I did my answer key and I chose Flat Stanley as the correct answer. Scrolling down, the next question type here is a multiple choice grid. Multiple choice grid. So let me click off of that question just so you guys can see. This is what the question would look like for the students. So we have the question stem at the top, match the biome with its description. These actually show up. You can see the full description when you're looking at it from a student's perspective. And then across the top, I have my different biomes. So in this case, there is one answer for each row. So one answer for each row. Now, if I click to edit this, I'm adding my rows and I'm adding my columns. And then in my answer key, I come in and actually choose the point values over here on the right-hand side and choose the correct answer for each of them. This top one got cut off. In this case, when I require this question, it's requiring a response in each row. It requires a response in each row. And then finally, our last question type is the checkbox grid. So this is good if maybe you're doing some true and false questions. You could do a whole bunch of true and false questions as a checkbox grid. I did this one as A is less than B or A is greater than B. So each of these rows has its own answer, but they might have the same answer as a row above or below them. So I've got my question stem here, my values here, and then each of my check boxes. And if I click in here, then with my answer key, I'm able to, again, give point values. It's going to grade each of those rows separately, and I do my answer key in the middle. Next, I'm going to move over to showing some results for students. So once the students take your quiz, the responses are going to come here at the top. If you've used Google Forms in the past, the last few years, this has gotten quite a facelift, and it looks different. It functions differently than it used to, but Google Forms currently is going to collect all your responses within the form itself. If you would like a spreadsheet of those responses, we're going to click at the top right-hand corner, Create Spreadsheet. It's not going to automatically create the spreadsheet for you, which is kind of good because you maybe don't need the whole spreadsheet. You just want to see the responses that the students have given. You want to see maybe their individual scores, things like that. So we can do most of that stuff within this responses area here. So first I'm going to get a summary. So I'm going to see how well did my students do overall, what was frequently missed questions that I have, and then I'm going to go down to each of my question types. So here's my first question. I had 4 students respond with the first one, and 4 students get the correct answer. I had 5 students respond correctly for my second question. Everyone got the third question right, so I know I don't need to review that again. And then for my multiple choice grid and my checkbox grid, I'm going to get each of the rows, so this is row 1, as a different graph here. So here's row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then I can do the exact same thing down here. So I'm able to see how well my students did for this question. I have each of these, and now this is just going to be a summary, so I'm still not getting really individual student responses. But let's say I want to go to an individual student response. Over here on the right-hand side, I'm going to choose individual, and then I can see who is this student, happens to be Ruthie. How did she answer those questions? How well did she do overall? I can also see up at the top, Ruthie received 8 out of 13 points for this quiz. I don't know if you guys are taking grades right now, but if you wanted to take grades, you could do that. Or you could just say, okay, Ruthie, she did really well in the math questions down at the bottom, but maybe we need to review biomes, something along those lines. I'm also able to, if I wanted to print this response, I could print it to a PDF and share it with a parent if they wanted to see that, something along those lines. If I wanted to give Ruthie another chance, she could always go back in and take the quiz again. I can delete her response and let her take it again. And then once I'm ready to stop accepting quiz responses, I can also come in here and just toggle that off, and then it's no longer accepting responses. This would be helpful if you're going to give weekly quizzes and you want to make sure that a parent doesn't click on last week's quiz when they should be worrying about this week's quiz. You might want to just turn off those quizzes and no longer accept responses. So let's look at sharing this now. So if I come up here to send, I have a few options. I can send via a link. So I just do my link, I copy, and then I'm going to paste this in an email, in my classroom, in Canvas, because I know we have some secondary teachers with this. So that's an easy option. That's going to be your easiest option in terms of sharing this with students. If you are a Google Classroom user, you can always add this quiz to an assignment in Google Classroom. So if I pop out to my Google Classroom quickly, and I'm going to create a quiz assignment. It gave me a blank quiz. I'm just going to click the X on that because that's not the quiz that I want. I want to add the other quiz that I just created, or that I just edited in this case. And that is my K5 quiz. It's going to be worth, I think it was worth 13 points. It was for all of my students. The due date maybe is Friday. And my topic, I'll put it on Wednesday. All right, so I'm going to stop my recording. Let me go back to my outline, make sure that I did everything. Oh, the other thing I do want to mention, because if maybe you're going to be giving this as a quiz that students can take over a period of time. On these three dots right here in my responses tab, I do want to show you that you can turn on email notifications for new responses. So maybe you're not going to be just sitting there waiting for responses to come in, but you do want to be notified when a student actually takes a quiz. You can get email notifications for new responses, which is a nice feature in there.